The Galactic Empire had seen many species rise and fall under their banner, each conquest a testament to their unchallenged dominance. When their scouts stumbled upon a seemingly insignificant blue planet on the fringes of a modest star system, it barely raised an eyebrow among the council. Humanity, in their estimation, was just another primitive species dabbling in space exploration, barely scratching the surface of interstellar travel. Yet, the Empire's strategy was clear: crush any potential threats early, even if they appeared trivial. A massive fleet was dispatched to Earth, bristling with weapons that could level cities in a single strike. The message was simple: humanity must surrender unconditionally or face annihilation. Imperial broadcasts echoed across human airwaves, translated into dozens of Earth languages to ensure no one misunderstood. The Empire's ultimatum dripped with arrogance, their expectations of human compliance a foregone conclusion. But humanity's response caught them off guard. Earth's leaders, convened in an emergency summit, knew they were outmatched. No fleet or weapon could stand against the Empire's technological superiority. Yet, surrender was unthinkable. Humanity's history was one of defiance, even in the face of insurmountable odds. After hours of tense deliberation, a bold counteroffer was crafted. They would not submit. Instead, they proposed a dialogue, an exchange of knowledge, specifically, an exchange of histories. The Galactic Empire's initial reaction was dismissive. What could a fledgling species offer that would be of interest? Yet, curiosity lingered. Humanity was uncharacteristically calm for a species on the brink of destruction. The proposal was unusual enough to warrant attention. Viewing it as a chance to glean insight into their potential adversary, the Empire agreed. Earth's leaders transmitted access to a comprehensive archive of human history, particularly its wars and conflicts, spanning centuries. Within the Empire's high command, the archives were received with an air of bemusement. They anticipated disorganized records of petty tribal skirmishes and primitive warfare. For a species that had just breached their planetary borders, how complex could their history possibly be? The first documents shattered those assumptions. What began as mild curiosity quickly turned into morbid fascination as Imperial historians sifted through the blood-soaked pages of humanity's past. The world wars were their initial exposure, a staggering revelation of conflict on a scale the Empire had never imagined. Empires rising and falling, nations mobilizing millions, and battles waged with strategies that blurred the lines between genius and madness. The trenches of Europe, the aerial bombings, and the advent of nuclear weapons painted a picture of unrelenting carnage. The sheer efficiency of humanity's ability to wage war left the Empire unsettled. Unlike their own highly structured skirmishes, humanity's wars seemed chaotic, driven by emotion and ideology, yet horrifyingly effective. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were a turning point in their review, showcasing a species willing to annihilate entire cities to force an end to conflict. The Empire's commanders, who prided themselves on clean and decisive victories, struggled to comprehend such calculated ruthlessness. But the historical horrors didn't end there. As the Empire delved deeper, they discovered the Cold War, a period marked not by open conflict but by an ever-present threat of mutually assured destruction. Humanity had balanced on the knife's edge of total annihilation for decades, armed with enough nuclear firepower to destroy their planet several times over. The Empire's analysts found this particularly baffling. How could a species live under such constant threat and not succumb to despair or chaos? Instead, humanity thrived, innovating, and exploring even as they stared into the abyss. The records also unveiled countless revolutions, insurgencies, and civil wars, each more intricate and brutal than the last. From guerrilla tactics in dense jungles to urban warfare in sprawling cities, humanity's adaptability in combat was unparalleled. Empires had risen and fallen, their legacies written in blood, yet humanity had always persisted. Each war seemed to mold them into something stronger, something more tenacious. What disturbed the Empire most, however, was humanity's capacity for total war. The idea of targeting civilian populations, infrastructure, and even cultural heritage to cripple an enemy was almost alien to the Empire's sense of honor. Their wars had rules, unspoken codes that all combatants followed. Humanity, by contrast, seemed to discard all conventions when survival was at stake. To the Empire, this revealed a terrifying truth: humanity's resolve in war was not bound by ethics or tradition but by the sheer will to endure and emerge victorious. The archival footage played in the Empire's council chambers late into the night, showcasing not just the destruction but the aftermath, the rebuilding, the reconciliation, and the relentless march forward. This was not a species that broke under pressure, they thrived in it. They didn't merely survive wars, they used them as stepping stones for progress, learning, and evolution. By the end of the first review session, the mood within the Empire's leadership was somber. The arrogance that had fueled their initial approach to humanity was replaced with a gnawing unease. These humans, primitive as they might seem, were unlike any foe the Empire had ever encountered. Their history was a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and an almost pathological refusal to accept defeat. The humans had not just shared their history, they had sent a warning. And the Empire, for the first time in centuries, found itself questioning the wisdom of war. The Galactic Empire's scholars and generals approached the human historical archives with a sense of morbid curiosity. They had expected tales of unorganized chaos, tribal battles, and rudimentary tactics. Instead, they found themselves diving into a narrative of unparalleled brutality, strategic brilliance, and relentless survival. The archives began with the World Wars, two global conflicts that defined the trajectory of human history. The sheer scale was staggering. Millions of soldiers clashed across continents, supported by industrial machines churning out weapons, vehicles, and ammunition at unprecedented rates. The Empire's generals noted how humanity transformed its entire civilization into engines of war. Factories that once produced vehicles for transportation were converted overnight to produce tanks and bombers. Civilian populations, far from being spectators, were mobilized to support the war effort, creating a level of involvement that blurred the lines between soldier and citizen. It was the trench warfare of World War I that first unsettled the Empire's analysts. The thought of soldiers enduring years in muddy, disease-ridden trenches, often advancing mere meters at the cost of thousands of lives, seemed unthinkable. To the Empire's forces, used to swift and decisive campaigns, the willingness of humans to endure such prolonged suffering was an alien concept. And yet, there was no sign of surrender. Each battle, no matter how devastating, was met with renewed determination. Humanity's endurance wasn't just physical, it was deeply psychological, a refusal to yield even when all seemed lost. Then came the advent of aerial warfare in World War II, a revelation that horrified and fascinated the Empire in equal measure. Humanity had taken to the skies not for exploration, but for destruction. Entire cities were leveled in bombing raids, a concept so far removed from the Empire's measured tactics that it defied belief. The strategic use of such destructive force displayed an efficiency and pragmatism that unsettled the alien commanders. Yet what stood out most was humanity's ability to innovate under pressure. In just a few short years, humans went from struggling with rudimentary planes to developing bombers capable of delivering nuclear weapons, devices so destructive they could end civilizations with a single strike. The use of nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a sobering point in the archives. For the Empire's leaders, this wasn't just an act of war. It was a stark demonstration of humanity's willingness to wield ultimate power when necessary. The records detailed the aftermath, the devastation, the loss of life, and the long-term consequences on the environment and survivors. But what struck the Empire most was humanity's response to their own actions. Rather than collapsing under the weight of guilt or destruction, they used this as a moment of introspection. Humans debated, studied, and ultimately sought to prevent such weapons from being used again. It was a strange dichotomy, a species capable of annihilation yet determined to impose limits on themselves. As the archives progressed into the Cold War era, the tone shifted from open conflict to an omnipresent tension. The Empire's analysts were captivated by the concept of mutually assured destruction. Humanity had reached a point where war between superpowers would guarantee total annihilation, yet rather than succumbing to despair, they engaged in a different kind of warfare. Proxy battles in distant lands, espionage, psychological operations, and an arms race that pushed technological boundaries defined this era. The Empire marveled at how humanity thrived under the constant threat of extinction, turning fear into fuel for innovation and resilience. But humanity's story wasn't just about global conflicts. The archives revealed countless uprisings, revolutions, and civil wars, each more complex than the last. From guerrilla warfare in the jungles to urban insurgencies in sprawling metropolises, humans displayed an uncanny ability to adapt their tactics to any environment. The Empire noted with unease how humanity had mastered the art of asymmetrical warfare, using the element of surprise and superior knowledge of terrain to outmaneuver larger, better-equipped forces. The historical accounts of Vietnam, the French resistance during World War II, and countless other conflicts showcased humanity's ability to weaponize creativity and desperation. The concept of total war was another revelation that sent ripples of unease through the Empire's leadership. Unlike the Empire's conflicts, where clear rules of engagement preserved certain aspects of civilian life, humanity had no such reservations. Wars were waged not just on battlefields but across entire societies. Civilians were targeted, infrastructure was destroyed, and cultural symbols were annihilated, all with the aim of breaking the enemy's will to fight. To the Empire, this was a chilling display of pragmatism. Humanity's approach to war wasn't just about defeating the enemy, it was about ensuring their inability to ever rise again. Perhaps the most disturbing realization came from the sheer unpredictability of human warfare. The Empire's generals prided themselves on structured tactics and predictable outcomes. Humanity, by contrast, thrived on chaos. Strategies were fluid, evolving mid-battle to exploit weaknesses. Leadership wasn't confined to a rigid hierarchy. Individual soldiers often displayed initiative, turning the tide of battle through ingenuity and quick thinking. This decentralized approach was alien to the Empire, which relied heavily on strict command structures. The thought of facing an enemy where every individual could potentially become a critical threat was deeply unsettling. The psychological aspect of human warfare also left a lasting impression. Propaganda, psychological operations, and the manipulation of information were wielded with precision, influencing not just enemy forces but entire populations. The Empire's scholars noted how humanity could wage war without ever firing a shot, breaking an enemy's spirit through fear, misinformation, and psychological pressure. This level of manipulation was a weapon the Empire had never considered, and it left them questioning their own vulnerabilities. By the time the Empire's review of humanity's war history was complete, the mood within their leadership had shifted dramatically. What had started as a confident march toward conquest had turned into a sobering lesson in survival and resilience. Humanity wasn't just another species to conquer. They were a force of nature, molded by centuries of conflict into something far more dangerous than the Empire had anticipated. It was clear now, humanity wasn't simply a collection of fragile beings on a backwater planet. They were survivors, innovators, and, when necessary, destroyers. The Empire's leaders had learned a hard truth: they had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, they had invited uncertainty into their plans for domination. The question now wasn't whether they could defeat humanity, but whether they could afford the cost of trying. The Empire's command chambers, once filled with the certainty of victory, now echoed with whispers of doubt. The review of humanity's history had shaken even the most steadfast generals. For a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive, humanity's capacity for destruction and resilience was staggering. This wasn't an enemy that would crumble under the weight of superior technology. Instead, they appeared to thrive in adversity, their greatest weapon not their machines, but their unyielding spirit and boundless ingenuity. The council convened to discuss their next move. For the first time in centuries, hesitation seeped into their deliberations. The thought of facing a species capable of rebuilding entire civilizations after nuclear annihilation was daunting. Humanity's wars had shown an unparalleled ability to adapt, turning defeats into stepping stones and transforming scarcity into innovation. Unlike the Empire, whose victories were achieved through technological superiority and strategic precision, humanity's strength lay in their chaotic creativity. The unpredictability of their tactics was a wild card the Empire had never encountered. Some argued that humanity's war history was exactly that, history. The humans of today might not possess the same tenacity or resolve. Perhaps they had grown complacent, softened by the comforts of modern life. But the evidence suggested otherwise. Even as they ventured into space, humanity retained the lessons of their past. Their military doctrines and strategies continued to evolve, incorporating centuries of brutal experience into modern systems. The Council was forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. The humans were prepared for war, even if they hadn't sought it. This growing uncertainty led to heated debates among the Empire's leadership. The generals who had initially advocated for swift conquest now hesitated, their confidence eroded by the sheer weight of what they had learned. Humanity was not like any other species the Empire had encountered. They lacked the predictable patterns of a centralized command. Their wars were driven by a decentralized determination, with individuals often stepping into leadership roles during crises. This was a species where every soldier, every civilian, could potentially change the course of a battle. The thought was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The High Chancellor, an unyielding proponent of the Empire's expansionist agenda, struggled to reconcile their previous assumptions with the grim reality before them. A direct assault might lead to a victory, but it would come at a cost the Empire had never before faced. The idea of prolonging a war against humanity, draining resources and morale, was a risk that couldn't be ignored. The Empire's pride and reputation were at stake, but so too was their future stability. It was in the midst of this internal turmoil that humanity made a bold move. Sensing the Empire's hesitation, Earth's leaders extended an invitation, a chance for the Empire to witness firsthand the consequences of humanity's wars. The offer was unexpected, almost provocative, yet it carried a disarming sincerity. Humanity wasn't hiding from their history. Instead, they wanted the Empire to see the scars of their past up close. After much deliberation, the Empire agreed to send a delegation. They framed it as a reconnaissance mission, but underlying the decision was a growing curiosity. What could humans possibly show them that wasn't already detailed in the archives? The delegation, composed of military leaders, historians, and diplomats, descended to Earth under heavy scrutiny. What awaited them was beyond anything they could have imagined. The first stop was Hiroshima. The site, preserved as a haunting memorial, stood as a testament to humanity's darkest hour. The Empire's delegates walked through the remnants of a city obliterated in an instant. The visuals were harrowing: charred ruins, shadows etched into walls, and artifacts that told stories of lives lost in a blink of an eye. Yet what struck them most wasn't the destruction, it was the resilience. Hiroshima had risen from the ashes, rebuilt not as a monument to despair, but as a symbol of hope and peace. The humans who guided the tours spoke openly of the tragedy, their tone somber but resolute. They acknowledged the pain but emphasized the lessons learned. The delegation was then taken to Verdun, the site of one of the bloodiest battles in human history. The landscape, scarred by trenches and craters, bore silent witness to the horrors of World War I. Stories of soldiers enduring months in freezing mud, under constant bombardment, painted a picture of unimaginable suffering. And yet, despite the odds, they had persevered. The delegation couldn't fathom such endurance. The idea of continuing to fight under such conditions was alien to them. The thought lingered: if humanity could endure Verdun, what lengths would they go to in a modern conflict? Finally, the delegation visited Chernobyl, a place not of war but of catastrophe. The abandoned city, reclaimed by nature, was a chilling reminder of humanity's capacity for both destruction and recovery. The disaster had been man-made, a testament to human fallibility, but the response had been extraordinary. The Empire's delegates were struck by the stories of those who had risked their lives to contain the disaster, willingly stepping into deadly radiation zones to prevent further harm. It was an act of sacrifice that defied logic, yet it encapsulated humanity's unique resilience. Each location painted a picture of a species that did not break under pressure but instead transformed their scars into lessons. The Empire's delegation returned to their fleet with heavy hearts and troubled minds. Their mission had been to assess humanity's weaknesses, but they had instead uncovered their greatest strengths. Back in the council chambers, the delegation's report sparked intense debate. The images of Hiroshima, Verdun, and Chernobyl were broadcast across the Empire's networks, stirring public opinion. The Empire's citizens, accustomed to tales of their unchallenged superiority, found themselves questioning their leaders. Could they truly afford to go to war with a species so deeply marked by survival, so profoundly shaped by adversity? The decision was no longer about victory, it was about the cost. The delegation's report concluded with a chilling observation: humanity did not seek war, but if provoked, they would fight with a ferocity and creativity the Empire had never seen. For the first time, the Council considered an alternative to conquest. They realized that humanity might not be an enemy to subjugate, but a potential ally to respect. The cracks in the Empire's confidence widened. Their war machine, built on precision and dominance, was unprepared for the chaos and unpredictability of human resistance. The High Chancellor, once the loudest voice for conquest, now found themselves silent. The risks were clear, and the stakes were too high. The Empire faced a choice: engage in a war that could shatter their image of invincibility, or take the unprecedented step of seeking peace with a species that had defied all expectations. The delegation's report reached the Empire's ruling council with an impact that reverberated across its vast dominion. The findings were clear: humanity was not to be underestimated. Every attempt to classify them as a primitive, fragile species had been shattered. The scars of Hiroshima, the trenches of Verdun, and the haunting silence of Chernobyl told a story of unparalleled resilience and adaptability. For the first time in its millennia of conquests, the Empire faced an enemy that could match their resolve, not through advanced technology, but through sheer determination and ingenuity. The Council was divided. On one side were those who clung to the old ways of conquest, unwilling to let fear dictate their actions. They argued that humanity, for all its grit, was still technologically inferior and vulnerable to the overwhelming power of the Empire's fleets. Yet their confidence wavered. The archives had shown a species that thrived in desperation, turning adversity into innovation. The risks of engaging humanity were no longer abstract, they were real and daunting. On the other side were the pragmatists, those who had been deeply moved by the delegation's experiences. They recognized that war with humanity would not only be costly but unpredictable. The Empire's military machine, built for swift and decisive victories, was ill-suited for the kind of protracted, chaotic conflict humanity had mastered. For the first time in the Empire's history, they considered an alternative: peace. Humanity, sensing the growing uncertainty within the Empire, took a step that surprised even their own leaders. They proposed a formal summit, offering to discuss terms that could prevent conflict. It wasn't an act of submission but an olive branch, extended with the understanding that both sides had much to lose. The proposal was met with skepticism by many in the Empire's leadership, but the delegation's testimony carried weight. The Council ultimately agreed, albeit reluctantly. The stakes were too high to ignore. The summit, held aboard a neutral space station, marked a turning point in interstellar history. The Empire's representatives arrived in full regalia, their towering forms radiating authority and power. The human delegation, by contrast, was unassuming, dressed in practical attire that reflected their earthly roots. Yet, despite their modest appearance, the humans exuded a quiet confidence that unnerved their counterparts. The negotiations began with cautious exchanges, both sides testing the waters. The humans spoke openly about their history, acknowledging the flaws and tragedies that had shaped them. They didn't shy away from their mistakes but framed them as lessons learned. This honesty, so alien to the Empire's more calculated diplomacy, struck a chord. It was a stark contrast to the Empire's culture, where image and perception often overshadowed substance. The turning point came when the humans proposed a bold idea. Rather than engaging in conflict, why not forge an alliance? Humanity offered their unique perspective on warfare, survival, and innovation as a resource the Empire could tap into. In return, they sought access to the Empire's advanced technologies, not for conquest, but for growth and exploration. The proposal was audacious, even risky, but it carried a logic the Empire couldn't ignore. The discussions were lengthy, punctuated by moments of tension and breakthrough. The humans' candor and willingness to address difficult topics contrasted with the Empire's formal, guarded approach. Yet, as the talks progressed, a mutual respect began to form. The Empire's representatives, initially skeptical, found themselves drawn to humanity's unorthodox perspective. The humans, for their part, recognized the Empire's strength and structure as assets that could complement their own chaotic resilience. The treaty, when finally signed, was a historic document. It marked the end of the Empire's unchecked expansion and the beginning of a new era of cooperation. Humanity was granted a seat on the Empire's Council, a position that symbolized their equal standing. In return, the Empire gained access to humanity's strategic expertise and a deeper understanding of their unyielding spirit. The effects of the treaty were felt almost immediately. Humanity's insights into conflict resolution and adaptability began to reshape the Empire's approach to governance and diplomacy. Where once they had relied solely on force, they now found value in negotiation and understanding. The Empire's citizens, initially resistant to the idea of aligning with a lesser species, were gradually won over by humanity's contributions. For humanity, the treaty was transformative. The advanced technologies of the Empire accelerated their progress, opening doors to possibilities they had only dreamed of. Yet they didn't lose sight of their history. The lessons of their past continued to guide them, reminding them of the cost of war and the value of peace. As time passed, humanity's role within the Empire grew. They became mediators, bridging gaps between species with their unique perspective on conflict and cooperation. Their ability to navigate the complexities of interstellar politics earned them a reputation as problem solvers, a far cry from the primitive image the Empire had once held. In the end, the Empire's leaders reflected on the path they had taken. The decision to avoid war with humanity had been difficult, driven by fear and uncertainty. Yet, it had also been a moment of growth, forcing them to confront their assumptions and embrace a future they hadn't anticipated. Humanity, for all their flaws and chaos, had proven to be more than an adversary. They were partners, allies, and perhaps even equals. The galaxy, once dominated by the Empire's unyielding will, was now a place of greater balance. And at the heart of this transformation was humanity, a species that had turned their bloody history into a beacon of resilience and hope, reminding the Empire and the galaxy of the power of survival, adaptability, and the unyielding desire for a better future.